We always say creators are like an octopus.
Someone with 1 million followers who, has 10,000 story views, well, that's not that great.
How long have you guys been doing the whole influencer management piece?
We're like, what? I have 1 million followers 6 months later.
Even if they did provide an ROI, it was just like pulling teeth. She was like,
I feel like a lot of creators think it's like a hands-off relationship, right?
Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Adventures. I'm Steven.
and I'm Giselle.
And today we have two very special guests. We are actually going to have on our managers. They help us with all of our, basically running our entire business as content creators and influencers. So today we have Aaron and Kaylee from Neon Rose on here. Welcome to the podcast, you guys.
Hey guys.
Thanks for having us.
I feel like, what have we been working together now for like a year and a half, I think?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Time flies.
It goes fast. You could say 3 years and I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
it goes fast.
Yeah, I feel like, I think that's the fun part about working together is it feels like, G and I have been dating for like 6 years or something like that. But since we travel and we talk to each other every single day and everything feels like I've known her my whole life. Same thing with you guys. I feel like since we are constantly emailing, chatting, we met up with you guys for the first time, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
So that was lovely.
Yeah, we talk every single day, and it's so funny because we, like I said, a year of working together, and then we meet each other for the first time. It's like we already know each other so well. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I always tell my managers, you're going to talk to your clients, more than you talk to, your husband or your wife. You definitely...
No, it's true.
And if you're not, the group chats they go off. So... that's good. You want to make sure you definitely don't want to be like, I haven't heard from my manager in a while. So.
Yeah, very, very true.
And honestly, we have heard quite a bit in that regards from other people who have brought on managers, which is a little scary. But we have been so blessed to have you guys, and everyone else who has been our friend that has also joined Neon Rose has just nothing but good things to say.
I know, it's been kind of fun. I feel like Quinn was the first person I think that we saw. She was the person that we reached out to and was like, hey, we see you with Neon Rose. They just reached out to us. How's been your experience? And I feel like slowly but surely I'm like, oh, there's another one of our friends. Oh, there's another one. And now it's like we're getting ready to go to Norway in 2 months. And I feel like we have the entire
8 out of 10 people are all managed by you guys.
It's almost seeming like it's a Neon Rose trip happening out there. So it's very, very exciting. We love that. Listen, I love that within my own team that a lot of our employees are friends with each other. So to me, I always, if we ever have a creator reach out to us that says oh, I'm friends with Giselle and Steven, or they refer to me to me, that makes me I'll move that to the top to be let's at least have the conversation. I value the collaboration, the community of that. So we love that both on the roster and, like I said, at the team.
So fun. And how long have you guys been doing the whole influencer management piece? Were you part of the OG squad back? I don't even know when Instagram and all of that first started, or how long have you guys been doing it?
Well, I actually was thinking about this before we got on this call, because I was like, when did I start? Because I had the agency for a year before it was called Neon Rose. So we don't count that year when we celebrate our years. But I started the company about 7 years ago. It'll be 6 officially as Neon Rose. But that was, when I got into the space, it was very early on. I'm talking, there were no Instagram stories. It was very different world back then. Even honestly, we have a lot of van lifers on our roster. That was not a vertical that was people really knew about. So I would definitely say I come from that OG pioneer group of getting into the influencer space. For me, I started the agency because I saw a hole in the industry for a health and wellness agency. I was working at a PR firm that was a health and wellness PR firm, and all the clients we were working with, the influencer talent, they didn't have management. And I was like, oh, there seemed to be opportunity for beauty and fashion bloggers at the time is what it was. But there wasn't an agency for the wellness space, and that incorporated fitness, food, travel, mental health. And so that's really where the idea of, Neon Rose was born. And for me, it was very different because I was an attorney first, and I saw Instagram coming onto the scene, and I was like, I want to work in this, not sure how. And obviously a lot of things led to where we are today.
That's so interesting. So you were an attorney before all of this?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yes, I started out as an entertainment attorney, and then I moved to DC, and there was not a lot of entertainment law there, and so I worked in an art museum for almost 6 years as an attorney there, and that was more employment law. And then when I was living in DC is really when Instagram was coming onto the scene, and I was like making my friends do like staged photo shoots, and I was like, this is the thing. There was really like management was so new that I didn't even think about that being a career, but coming from from an attorney, like the contract negotiations, like that's what I was doing. So it was kind of a natural progression for me. And I left my job in DC and moved back to California, moved to LA, and just kind of dove right in, took a bunch of internships, free internships, to really learn everything. And one thing led to the next, where I ended up at that PR firm, launched their their influencer division for them. And then, about 2 years later, launched Neon Rose.
That's so interesting. My like OG career path is I wanted to do entertainment law and then somehow ended up as an influencer. And
my first job was working on The Bachelor, was the first season of The Bachelor.
Oh, wait, no way.
Really when reality TV was, and I was like, this is totally my career. This is what I'm going to do. You think that like just because you're working on entertainment, it's going to be like very glamorous. Like, no, it's not. It's still working behind a desk. It's not as glamorous as one might think it is, but everything, like all of my past people always ask me like, oh, do you regret like being a lawyer and going to law school? I'm like, no, definitely not. Like it has all led me to where I am and given me like skills to like obviously learn to be a great, manager and like teach my managers like how to like, be firm and negotiate and read contracts. A lot of skills really, parlayed into what we do now.
And Kaylee, how about you?
Sorry, one sec. For you teaching me to read a contract, that's probably like the biggest skill I've had. When I started at Neon Rose, like we didn't have a contracts attorney. So, it was me reading those contracts and saying, ooh, maybe we should redline that, maybe not. But now, like as a manager and being able to read through these and figure out, okay, we can work with this. Okay, this needs to come out is probably one of the greatest skills I've had. So thank you so much. But moving on to me, my story is a little bit different. So in 2020, I was a senior in college at the University of Oregon and, just trying to figure out what I was going to do after school. I knew I had wanted to work in travel PR. I had an internship in that. So I left the travel and hospitality space, was a PR major. So definitely was going to go down that route. And then COVID hit and then all my plans went bye.
Yep.
So just kind of had to figure it out. So I was doing a lot of LinkedIn stalking, just trying to figure out what my plan was. I had always decided that, I was going to graduate with a job and there was no other option. But, the universe said that's just not going to happen. So was trying to figure it out, did all my LinkedIn stalking. And then I came across like this really cute logo of an agency called Neon Rose. And I was like, what does this mean? So I just messaged the founder, which was Erin, and just asked to talk to her and like learn more about the agency. And while they didn't have a position open at the time, it sounded like something I really wanted to do. I had always been in social media. I did the social media for a student-run news organization and then for a rideshare company called Peace Health Rides in Eugene, Oregon. So I was very familiar with the space, but, wasn't necessarily sure that's what I wanted to do. And then they rang me up one day and said they had a position, and I took it like that because, one, it was COVID and I needed a job. But two, it just sounded like a really fun opportunity that was not like anything else I had ever seen. And I've been with the agency ever since, 4 years now, pretty much, and went from a talent coordinator all the way to a senior talent manager, and have loved every second of it. It's really fun.
I know we've loved working with you because I know that we were with one of your old managers, Jenna for quite a while, and then we switched to Kaylee. I was like, this is you've always been so much fun. So stoked.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I really do love working with you guys.
Yeah, it's the best.
And you guys like get my sense of humor. It's fun to chat back and forth.
That's one of our core company brand values is fun. And so we always try to keep the group chats fun.
We all have fun over at Neon Rose.
Yeah, it's definitely what I say.
I'm the
one of
party
ours
over here.
It's a tough, our team obviously works really hard. We're a team of 20 women now. We're all a female company. And, because the industry is, as you guys know, like it doesn't really shut off. I do value like our culture a lot. I do value anyone who follows Neon Rose sees that we like to do a lot of events for our team because, we want to make sure like it's like we still are having a good time and we're getting that like in-person time with each other as well, especially being a remote company. So you want to like, we're not in the office all day together. We do work together like once a week or once every other week. And when you get that time, everyone's just like, loves that in-person piece. So just more like we have an event tomorrow night. So we do like to, have a little bit of fun.
I know. I remember Giselle looked at me when she saw you guys post something. She's like, "Man, if the influencer route ever doesn't want to work out, I might
I'll put it in my resume."
You're hired. You're shoo-in.
I remember that was so. And then, so you said you've been in it since 2020. How do you feel like you've seen it change? Like I know Kaylee's been in it since 2020. You've been in it since pre-COVID. We really started in 2020, like late 2020, and like actually started understanding in 2021. What do you think have been like a few of the biggest changes you've seen happen from like when you started to now? Because obviously it changes every day.
Besides for the Instagram obvious like algorithm updates and reels and all that stuff, like I feel like the industry as a whole has just changed completely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for me, just platform expansion, there's always something new. It's like, now it's Lemonade and it's Threads, and, it's like, and it was honestly TikTok, that was something I spent like years even just talking to clients being like, you gotta get on this thing called TikTok. Yeah. And they're like, I want to get on TikTok. And then some of them are like, okay, I'll get on TikTok. And they're like, what? I have 1 million followers 6 months later. Like, it just, some things, if you jumped on things like early, some things work out and some things don't, but you're kind of in a space where like, you do need to jump on the things when they're happening because they might take off and you don't want to be the person being like, man, I wish I would have gotten on that 6 months ago. I think for us, like a big change that we see in the management piece is a really big emphasis on the ROI. And I think that is what creators are either struggling with or they're thriving. You're kind of on generally one of the two camps. A lot of creators that started in the space in the beginning, like there was no emphasis on that. There was no way to even track that. Like I said, there was no stories, there was no links. Like that was not a thing. It was all about like brand awareness and just budget. There was big budgets still, but there wasn't really a way for brands to be like, are we getting our money back? Are we making money? And I always knew in the beginning, like this isn't sustainable how it is because there's a lot of money going into this industry, but like brands are like, are they getting any of that back? And, I started on the brand side. So I was working with the brands, trying to explain to them why working with talent was going to be good for them. But they're like, well, how? They're like, how am I seeing this as making sense? And at the time we're just being like, listen, it's getting your name out there. Unboxings were the thing, just getting gifting in the hands of influencers was like a big deal. Now it's like brands like, great, we're 10, 20, 50,000 plus budgets on campaigns. Like, of course they want to be able to be like, are we seeing a return there? So that's the biggest thing I think in addition to obviously video content and reels and all of those things. But I think from the management perspective, making sure that they're getting a return is the biggest emphasis we're seeing now in partnerships. And that's been like that for, a couple of years.
I would definitely say that is the biggest shift in campaign focus I've seen across, the last 4 years. Like Erin said, it was a really big tactic for brand awareness. And now a majority of campaigns are ROI focused. And then, coming from a management side, like you do really have to figure that out, earlier on in the negotiations. Like, is the scope of work the brand is presenting going to be achievable for my client? If not, like what can we do to, rework some things to make sure that my client is set up for success, the brand's going to be happy with the outcome, and also having, transparent conversations. Like with your talent, with the brand, can they do this? Can they not? Should we switch things around to make it, a successful campaign? But I will say, the ROI has been a really big thing across all the campaigns I've been working on. And, not to say, brand awareness is still a majority of campaigns. Important. Yeah, it's still important, and that's not necessarily going to go away, but there definitely is a bigger emphasis on ROI and, creators creating content that is not only high quality, but can also convert.
I feel like I had the hardest time because if you guys have listened for a while, you guys know that I also started on the brand side and I launched my small businesses influencer program and all that. And convincing my boss, who is like a 60 plus, like anti-influencer person, that these people are worth the money was so difficult. And even if they did provide an ROI, it was just like pulling teeth. She was like, why should I be sending all these free products to these people? They don't deserve it. Like, they should have to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. But the only strategy, I had to switch from just doing like unboxings to smaller nano people to specifically targeting, we mostly focus on YouTubers because that's where we saw the most ROI, and they all had 1 million plus subscribers. And then we'd pay a woman like $3,000 for an integration, and then she would make us 12,000. I'm like, here you go, here's the results. And she was like, okay, fine, we'll only work with that one. But the other ones that didn't provide anything is just like, especially from a small business standpoint, I totally see why a lot of smaller brands are so hesitant to work with people, because it's like your budgets are already so small and you want to make sure you're getting the most out of it. And so that's why when we're teaching our students now on the Creator Passport, we're like, you know, you do want to get paid for your time and the content and the production, obviously, but you do, if you're going the influencer route instead of UGC, you do have to have something to offer. And that's why, like, getting that clear in the beginning of, is this an awareness campaign or are you going for conversions, is so important.
Yeah, I think what Kaylee was saying about also just like for us setting up our talent for success is important, because, you know, if brand comes to us and they're looking for a certain level of, like, say, quality of content, like, and they're not caring about the sales, like, we know, like, who are we going to suggest for that? Okay, like, then maybe it doesn't matter if they can't convert as well, but they're going to create amazing content that you're obviously going to want to, like, you know, utilize for ads. That's a different thing. To me, that's a content creator. That's not an influencer. And you can be both for sure, but there's some people who are only one, and there are some people who are both. And so you have to really get clear on what are you doing on your platforms? Like, are you best for UGC? Like you said, like, those people don't necessarily always convert, but they create amazing content, and brands want to use that for their ads, and that's great. And so that's where, like, we want to make sure if you're wanting to work with X person, and we're like, they're maybe not going to convert as well, but they're going to create content, we want to make sure the deliverables reflect that. And we want to make sure, so we're not bringing them at this campaign and they're looking for you to do 4 times. They're like, what? I have to sell. Like, that's just not going to be realistic. Yeah. So we want to make sure we're aligning our creator with the goals. And then
I will say, like, a big part of my, like, day-to-day too is with these ROI campaigns, like, I spend a lot of time educating brands. Like, is this really going to be realistic with one story post? Like, are you really going to see 4 times the amount you're investing in return? Like, it's just not realistic. So, you know, having, again, those very transparent conversations about, like, what can be achievable, presenting the right type of talent in order to be set up for success is all just, you know, very important and a big part of my day-to-day now. I
think too, like, what was it previously, like 10 years ago, you need 7 touch points before a potential consumer. Now it's at least double, triple. And so just doing like a small story campaign, I mean, obviously it depends on the person and the platform, but you know, I'm glad that there's some brand education happening too, because sometimes we even, like, before working with you guys, we'd get some briefs and we're like, they want what for that? Like, and just coming from a marketing background and having degrees in that and just knowing our audience, we're like, that's not going to work. You know, that's not, even if they have, you know, gone through their whole legal team and they're like, this is the concept, and we get it and we're like, this is literally going to be a waste of money for you. And it's just, it's sad when they don't listen to the people that actually know.
That was definitely my experience. Like you were saying, I worked with a lot of men who had been in this business a very long time. They were very much in terms of, like, you know, they had their PR budgets. They all felt like getting in, you know, the magazine was going to be the way. I'm like, it's just not the way anymore. You know, like, that's not where you're going to see your return, and expect exactly what you're saying, like showing, like, here are the success stories. It was important, but we're still constantly educating. When someone's saying they're looking for this return and they just want 1 story in 3 frames, we're like, well, that's not going to happen. So we need to ensure, like, this needs to be a little more longer term. We want to add on some more deliverables. We want to ensure our creators are also aware from the beginning, so they can start organically weaving in that product like before that ad even goes live. So someone's like, oh, I've never seen that before. And then now you're expected just in 3 frames swipe up, especially when it's a higher ticket item. So it's like, that's people need some time to think like, and you're getting hit with ads all day long when you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, whatever it might be. Think about, someone seeing so many products, like how many are they realistically going to buy in a day? So we need to ensure that we're always setting up our talent for success, but like you said, we're always educating the brands and being like, well, here's a better scope. This is what we think is actually going to reach your goals. And then making sure like, well, also our talent, they know their platform the best. So like you might think this creative is great, but this is going to come off as a straight ad and everyone is probably going to just click right through that. So like always being like, give the influencer the creative control, which is you probably know as creators, that's like your dream when we're like, oh, you can do whatever you want. Like, but that doesn't happen as often as you probably would like it to.
It's funny because, these brands come to creators because they know how to market towards their audience, right? But then when you kind of, take that ability away, it's like, you don't really know how it's going to perform because it's not really them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that's why that's why we love you guys so much is we'll get a campaign or we'll get a brief and then we'll be like, I don't know. And we'll like, hey, can you push back on this or can you see? And then you guys are like
our advocates,
our biggest advocates. So we could go on for days and days about like biggest benefits from having a manager, even from like before to now. What would you guys say are like the things that you hear from your other clients that are like the biggest benefits for them having a manager when they hit that point?
Yeah. I mean, I've always said I take almost all of our new talent calls. It's just something I really like. It's really important to me. And I love doing it. Also, I love talking to the new creators, but I would say, I always start off by saying like, listen, you're ready for a manager when you're busting at the seams. If you're not at that point, I told many people, listen, you don't need a manager yet. You can still do this on your own. You can still handle it yourself. But once you're at that point where you're like, I actually cannot handle it myself, like there are like countless benefits to having a manager. The first one is literally what you just said, is having that advocate. It's really important. A lot of creators are like, oh, I have a really hard time like asking for more money or asking questions or pushing back. Like that's probably not maybe one of their skill sets. And it's also like, I always like to be like, as the creator, like you're the creator. Like you're probably not the one that's being that lead attorney in there and the manager and pushing back and kind of like reworking the conversation. That's why we don't want to have our creators even involved in the money piece in the conversation, because that's not where you guys should stay. You should stay on the creative side, on the fun side, on the content side, and the building the community side. So, really having someone that's going to advocate for you, who's going to help, like obviously reading your contracts, negotiating, getting you the best deal, always kind of, pushing back. But in like for us, like the relationship is so important. So we're always at the campus. We like Haley was saying before, like we want both sides to be happy. We want it to be successful. We want our creators to be successful. We want the brand to be successful. So as the manager, like we're always thinking, how do we strategize to like create that for both sides? So that's a really important piece that like your manager, that's what we're skilled at doing. And taking just the heavy lifting off your plate. I always say to creators, like what you should be spending your time doing is creating content, engaging with your community, building your community, growing your accounts. Like that's where you should spend your time. If you spend your time also being your manager and your accountant and your lawyer, you're going to be at your desk all day long. And we have so many calls with new talent that are like, I'm like, oh, I would love to see more, posting. And they're like, me too, but I'm at my desk all day on email chains. So we're like, yes, we have email chains that are hundreds of emails long. So if you were doing that on top of your day, like you just wouldn't be able to. I mean, you guys talk a lot about like consistency and posting. Like it's only so many hours in the day though. So if you also all those other roles, like you just can't. So
it's a time suck.
We always say creators are like an octopus, right? And you're like, you have to be a marketer and a manager and you have to be a lawyer and you have to be a photographer and this and that and this. And at a certain point, like you can't be good and do everything at a high level. So that's been like one thing that G and I, especially last year when we finally decided to like start
outsourcing,
with you guys, was outsourcing. And it's made our life, even with 2 people, like I don't know how single creators could
I know.
do it. Like
oh my gosh.
It blows my mind. They have so much more work. Like even with 2 people doing everything, it
just leads to burnout at some point. And then when you hit that state, you don't want to be creative. You stop posting. You get like in a slump. And then even
conversation we have with creators often that get to that point. And I mean, it's on my list of 2. Outsourcing is, and usually the first thing you outsource is going to be your manager. From there, we can then help you just decide like, what else do we need now? Do we need PR? Do you need branding? Do you need an affiliate manager? Like, then we can start to help put the other pieces into place of your team. And not everybody needs everything, but generally like your management and is your first thing. And we like to say we're a hybrid manager agent. We are like a licensed agency as well. And I say that like your agent is your person who's like there to like book you your deals, you know, meet, exceed your financial goals. That's what an agent does. The manager is kind of like looking at you like holistically 360, like, okay, what do we want to do for your personal brand? What's next for you? We're going to, you know, be looking to like create a product, do a co-collab. What do we not want to be doing anymore? We do like, that's kind of like looking at your whole brand. So we act as this hybrid role of both to give, because some people actually have two separate, so a manager and agent, and some people need that once maybe you're at that point, but not everyone really needs that. So we like to act as kind of that hybrid role so you get the best of both worlds.
Because if you have the background in the strategy and like being able to present that up front before, you know, a brand is confirmed or a deal is confirmed or anything like that, you know, again, it goes back to everyone's set up for success. So having those points in strategy too is just really important.
What do you find the biggest hesitation to be when people are on that fence of, oh, do I join or do I not join? Because I feel like for us, I think the biggest thing, honestly, was like, an ROI conversation. Am I going to get an ROI? Because like industry standard, you guys would say is 20%, right? Like that is a big chunk of change, but also like, will you be getting an ROI? And for us, we've talked about this on the podcast before. We crunched the numbers. We definitely did. So when people are on the fence of like making that step, what do you typically find to be helpful?
I feel like the thing that I see the most, and Aaron, feel free to jump in here. I feel like a lot of creators think it's like a hands-off relationship, right? Like, okay, I have a manager now, I can pass everything to them, and you know, I don't hear anything from them. They're just going to do their thing. They're going to bring me deals whenever. And, you know, that's really not the case. You know, we like to work with our clients as a team. And I will say my most successful clients are the ones that work very closely with me saying like, okay, I'm doing this on this day. Like maybe we can set something up for, you know, this event. I plan on doing this on my stories to like set up later in the day. Because, you know, it really is a team effort. And, you know, I can say how much you want to work with a brand day and night, right? But if you're there cultivating that relationship ahead of time and that relationship is already has a foundation, that just makes the negotiations and pitching part so much more easier.
Yeah. I mean, for me, especially on new talent calls, I would say if somebody has never had a manager before, a big hesitation I definitely talk about a lot on the calls is they're just kind of like, they're kind of nervous to give up that control. They're like, well, I'm used to handling my emails. I'm used to responding to brands. I'm used to having the relationships, you know, and I'm always like, listen, like we're not looking for you to give up the relationship, but we are like, you do have to relinquish some control. Like there is an element of like, you know, we want to build that trust. Our agency is built on a lot of transparency. I mean, you guys know we have a lot of things in place that, you know, that to really show our creators like what's going on behind the scenes. You can, you know, you can track you see your invoices, what's going on. You have, you know, your brand partnerships, the deliverables. Like we want you guys to be involved and see what's going on, but we also don't want to put everything on your plate because now you're like, well, I'm kind of doing it. So like we want to take as much as we can off you, but we want to give you that transparency so that you're like, okay, I want to ensure like, is everything happening? Like people worry about that. And like, I get that because some people may have been burned, may have been in an agency where it felt like things were falling through the cracks or emails weren't getting answered or they weren't getting updates. So that is definitely a big pain point I hear from creators when we talk to them, but you know, you have to build that trust. And so for us, we have a lot of systems in place so that things do not fall through the cracks and there are follow-ups, but you know, that is definitely like a hesitation from creators of just like giving up that control because they're used to it. And we always say in terms of the relationship piece, like we encourage that. We're like, we want you to build those relationships. We want you to have those conversations in your DMs. You're, you know, tagging brands and you should be talking to them. Like brands are going to be really excited to hear from the Lover's Passport. And then once you guys are like, okay, let's do it. We're in, let's work together. Okay, here, I'm going to, you know, introduce you to my manager, Kaylee. There's a lot of value in that. Doesn't mean that Kaylee can't reach out to that same brand and talk about why you guys are a fit and why you want to work with them. And that partnership still could very well still happen. And they do, of course. But there's a lot of value in hearing from the creator. So you still having those relationships is important. So like what Kaylee was saying, like just the misconception of creators coming on thinking like, okay, now I have a manager, I'm good to go, I don't have to do anything. Like you can do that, but you're not going to be as successful as you could be.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with everything you're saying. And I feel like that's the biggest thing we hear from our friends typically before they try and reach out to Neon Rose, or from like their past problems, is like they're missing emails. Like we just had someone else on the podcast and she was on the opposite side. So she used to work for an agency and work out to a lot of people. And she said that she would reach out to managers and she would get no responses, or she would reach out to this person and like that there would be a huge
take 2 weeks to respond.
Yeah, there'd be a huge disconnect. But I think like a lot of people might not see the behind the scenes, but especially with you guys, we have a coordinator. Like I'll send, Justina's not on the call, but I'll send Justina like 10 emails in a day and she get back to every single one of them within an hour. And same thing with,
that's for her.
and then same thing with like, Kate, it's not like it's only Kaylee. Like we have other people on Neon Rose team that'll reach out and send us pitches or send us different ideas and such. So
and we're pitching too,
Yeah,
and then
so-
looping it in. So it's like a nice, well-oiled machine. I feel like. Yeah.
I feel like
you guys got it dialed in, and I feel like for us, like as an agency, we bring a lot of resources to the team. Like you were talking about earlier about like, you know, do you get the ROI in terms from the talent perspective? Like for me, like once you have management, like you should not feel that percent, because you're going to be getting a lot more opportunities being brought to you. All of our managers are pitching, like you said, Kaylee's your manager, but you guys get opportunities from other managers as well. And that's something that we do here differently, because we want to ensure that you're being brought all the opportunities that are the best fit for you. And so there are a lot of people working, in a sense for your account. Always, Kaylee's constantly giving updates to managers of like where you guys are going next, like what you guys are looking for, if there's any, dream brands, whatever it is, so that if another manager happens to be talking to X brand that like Kaylee had mentioned, this is their dream brand, like they're going to pitch you as well. So there's a lot of collaboration just within the team. There's a lot of that going on.
Totally. And then when you guys are reaching out to new creators, like sometimes we'll be commenting on one of our friends' posts and we see Neon Rose commenting and we're like, oh shoot, they're trying to get them now. Like when you guys are doing that, like what's some of the things that you guys are looking for? Because I know earlier you said there's like creators or content creators and then there's like influencers, and we distinguish the two definitely. But what is it like that you guys are looking for when you're doing that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we look for in new talent. For us, we have a lot of great inbound requests, a lot of great referrals. Like I said, we always prioritize, like you guys have, like we have some great, great friend that's interested, like we're going to prioritize that conversation. But in terms of like if we're actually like, reaching out or even just analyzing somebody that's applied at Neon Rose, people are always like asking me like, what do I need in my following to be to, come to Neon Rose? And I'm like, that's no longer, that would be something back in the day. We're like, oh, okay, well, we're really not taking on creators under 100K, let's say, whatever it is. Yeah. That doesn't matter to me anymore. You can have 40,000 followers and have a highly engaged account. You could be crushing it on your link clicks and your sales. And we would love to be talking to you about management. So to me, it's not about anymore, like, I got to hit that 1 million followers at this, like, if you want to hit those numbers, those are great milestones, but like all your other insights have to be backed up with that, because someone with 1 million followers who's, has 10,000 story views, like, well, that's not that great. Yeah, exactly. So to us, it's really more about like the engagement. That's what we're looking for here. We're looking for like, where are your back end engagement? How are you going to perform on partnerships? But I'm also looking at like, how consistent is your content? What's your quality of content? Does this look like a personal page? Does this look like you're putting like thought into like this is a business. Like we look at this, like Neon Rose treats this as a business, and we expect our talent to treat it like a business too. Like we don't take on creators that are just looking to do this once in a while as a hobby, because that's not how we treat it, which is why we're a boutique firm. We don't just take on everyone. We have thousands of creators. If we took on everyone, we really want to be really smart about like, we want to work with people that literally this is their business. They want to treat it that way and like just really grow. And we're here to work with you. So I would say like quality of content, consistency, diversifying on platforms. If you only have one platform, it doesn't mean we wouldn't consider talking to you, but we are looking for people that generally are at least strong on multiple platforms. Most partnerships are looking for deliverables on both, and it's important to be able to diversify. So that's super important to us. And obviously, like we also look at like just you as a person? Like, are you a nice person? Are we going to work together? Are you professional? Do you respond to your emails? You know, those things, not only are they important to us, but they're really important to the brand. So we want people that treat it the same way. Like, we take it so seriously. We want to ensure our talent take it seriously too.
I will say, working with people that it's hard for them to commit to deadlines. Like, that is a really hard thing to work with, not only for us, but for the brands that we work with too. Like, there's so many different timelines happening. And yes, you know, there are times where things can be flexible, but, you know, having to go back and move things all the time, like, it really does disrupt what the brand has going on too. So being respectful of timelines, responding to things is always super important to us. But, you know, going back to follower count, I don't even think, like, I can't remember the last time I got a casting where they're asking for a specific following. Other than, like, budget wise, like, maybe this is all they have right now and it's not going to be for, like, a giant influencer, like that would make sense. But, you know, they're looking at engagement rates. What's your average link clicks looking like? And then to me, that's like, okay, we're going to look for conversions here because they're looking for link clicks. What's your story views at? What's your reel views at? Those are the kinds of things more people across the industry are looking at now.
I feel like that's super promising for people just starting out and that are a lot smaller in terms of numbers.
There's a rise in the micro, and that number has changed, because, like, when I first started out, you know, I would say, like, a micro influencer, I would have been like, is under 5K. Like, that's not, to me now, a micro influencer is probably like under like 20K, 30K, something like that. And, like, there's a rise in those because they've really created that community. And if you have, like, it is way better to have that really strong, really smaller community. And so those people, like, are, like, in brands, like you said, like, their budgets are generally can be a little bit smaller with them. So they're a little bit more drawn to that. So a lot of creators that are in that size, like, are starting to do really well. Their brands are looking for, like, that micro, or that nano, sometimes they call it, influencer. So people that are like, oh man, I'm too small, am I gonna be able to do this? Like, anyone can do it. If you can, like, commit to it and be consistent, grow your community, like, there's, you know, yes, is there a lot of competition? Of course. It's a very saturated industry, it is, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful. Like, you can definitely be successful, but you gotta put the time in for it.
Yeah, I think we were just on a brand trip, and so one of them was saying, like, yeah, we usually don't reach out to, like, bigger creators because we just assume that they're too expensive or too busy or don't want to work with them. So I feel like going back, that's what we keep telling all of our students. It's like, there's so much opportunity as long as you take the time to really nurture that audience and not worry constantly about growth, but worry more about, like, what the engagement is. Do you have that highly engaged audience? We think it's funny. We see all these people on Threads posting, like, oh my gosh, my videos didn't get shown to non-followers. And I was like, okay, what's wrong with being shown to, like, your followers, right? Those are the people that you're trying to target and that you're trying to nurture. I think it's so interesting where people all just want to see the big numbers, I think, personally, but from the brand side, like you said, it's completely different.
I mean, that's the same with, like, growing partnerships too. Like, there are times where you're going to have to accept gifting if you want to start a relationship, or, you know, you're going to start out on an affiliate program so that you can show you actually want to cultivate a relationship with this brand, because, you know, they're not going to just work with someone who they've never seen use the product. They want authentic relationships. So, you know, accepting the gifting, doing the affiliate programs are really great ways to, you know, start those relationships out. And you're not necessarily going to see the big numbers right up front, but you never know what that could lead to.
You might with the affiliate.
Yeah, you might with that.
I think affiliate is another thing we talk about, kind of like where things have, like, changed. Like, that definitely used to be kind of this, like, word that everyone was like, ugh, affiliate, like, no one wants to do that. And I'm not saying everyone does that now, but obviously with the rise of, like, you know, LTK and ShopMy, you know, even your Amazon storefronts, like, creators, like, some creators are making more money in affiliate than they are in brand partnership. So it's not something to, like, turn your nose up to, because to us, like, there's a lot of value in, you know, if there's, like, you know, maybe there's a base pay and there's an affiliate piece, like, you could do really well. Like, if you know that you know your audience, you know this is a product that they're going to be interested in, like, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to also take the affiliate commission, because you're also going to do well. So if creators are so quick to say no, like, does that mean that they don't think that they can sell that product? Like, what is the reason for it? Like, we want it, like, for us, we always want to ensure our creators are being compensated as well as they can. Like, that's one of our main priorities, of course. So if we feel like it's going to be a fit and there's an option to have, like, both pieces of the partnership, pay and affiliate, like, that's a double win, because people are purchasing. It's obviously a billion-dollar industry, many million
purchasing.
So there is a lot of value to the affiliate piece. And so I think creators, like, especially starting out, like, there's a lot of, if you can get into an affiliate program for, brands that you love and you use, like, you can show them, like, hey, they're seeing those numbers. You're selling it. Like, that's going to lead to a partnership.
You'd also be surprised too. The selling power is so crazy, right, on these affiliate platforms, and all these brands are looking for ROI conversions and all of that stuff, but they don't necessarily share how you perform at the end of the partnership, which to me doesn't really make the most sense.
Yeah, I wish they would.
Standards. But going back to LTK, Collective Voice, Amazon, Storefront, all of that stuff, if the brands aren't able to share that information with us, we have that from, your profiles there. So being able to show brands actual data, hey, they sell sunscreen really well. Here's their conversions on, Amazon Storefront or something like that. It's just better things for us to pitch for partnerships to show, like, their audience is actually interested in something like this.
Yeah, I know off the top of my head, just from our back end, we sell quite a bit of Vans and Vans
Where's the partner?
And credit card mileage related stuff, all the travel points and miles. So that's always, I personally love looking at all that back end data. And I wish we started prioritizing affiliates when we were smaller, so we weren't retroactively playing catch up on that department, because I think in my head we were like, oh, travel, like, there's not, our biggest other affiliates besides those are usually like experience related ones, so like Get Your Guide, Viator, all those ones where you book tours and stuff, and hotels, and those are all great, but they're all like much higher ticket items. I wish we had prioritized other verticals as well, because I'm seeing even just putting a little more effort into our LTK, which it could definitely be a lot better, and I could be a lot more consistent. However, even just putting a little more effort, I'm like, okay, well, I see more sales, so I wish we had like thought, oh yeah, I can post my outfits on LTK and maybe people would be interested, or my hiking boots or whatever.
I always tell students, like, people want to know, oh, no one cares what I'm with this. I'm like, no, they care. That's why they're following you. They care. I tell, like, I'm on calls with like my foodie clients. I'm like, listen, they obviously want your recipe, but they also want to know what that shirt is, where your earrings are from, what did you put in your hair today, what lip color are you wearing? Like, they want to know. And the best influencers, like, are generally now, like, not just focused in one specific niche. Like, they're your lifestyle. Like, everyone, like, yeah, of course you guys are travel, but people still want to know everything about you. They want to know what you're eating and what you're wearing and all the things. And so, like, and that's when I feel like someone's really, like, that's when you become this, like the influencer that everyone wants to be. Like, you really, like, like, if someone's like waiting for your story to like load and have like a new, and they see it, they're like, now you've made it. Like, people want to know, like, they're waiting, like, oh man, they haven't posted in a while. And the second you post, like, what's going on, like, that's what you want. You want to create that buzz, you want to create that interest, and you have to be able to literally open up your life as an open book, which also creates, like, some people don't want to do that, and that makes sense. But that's, and being vulnerable and not sharing all the, like, that's the other thing for influencers now. Like, the people that are sharing, like, if their life feels too aspirational, like, can't relate to that. Like, when I see a mom and that she seems perfect and she's always put together and her kids seem great and there's no crying and tantrums or messy houses, I'm like, I can't relate to that. When they're like having a breakdown, I'm like, okay, now we can be friends.
Not the only one.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm more likely to buy something when you post it, because now I feel like you're really sharing both sides. Because I'm like, when you don't really love something, I'm like, she's not posting it if she doesn't like it. So I'm more drawn to, like, it's where that's how you build the trust.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing was a lot of our top performing stories are actually not travel related at all. They're usually when we're doing mundane tasks around the house.
Pad Thai. I think the Pad Thai recipe was like our best one from this month. And we were like,
it's just me cooking dinner. Yeah, and then, like, I remember we did a house tour one time, and so, like, we had a few DMs of, oh my God, I love that your house is so messy. It makes me feel, I'm like, I didn't think it was that messy, but okay. Like,
for this video.
I was like, oh, I feel like it's semi-clean. I don't know, but I'm glad you can relate.
But you're relatable now. So.
There we go. And then, like, obviously for us, like, there's tons of things that we could have done better when we were first started. What do you think are, like, the biggest mistakes that you see creators making when they're working with brands, or, like, even nowadays that you guys see with your talent or people that are looking to come on board?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about even just the professionalism. I think that creators not understanding how important that is to like be on time, follow, follow the brief, follow the deliverables, the timing, being responsive. Like we're doing all of that as your managers, but we obviously like, if we don't have the stuff back from our talent, there's only so much we can do. Yeah. So it will go so far if you treat it like, if it's your job and something's due at 5 o'clock to your job, like you're going to do it. So you have to think about when you're in creator, like it's the same thing. It's still your job. It's still your deadline. So creators thinking that like, they can just do it when they want, like it's going to come back because the brand's like, they're going to remember like it just wasn't easy to work with. Like for us as an agency, I'm always telling our employees, like we just want to make it as easy as we can for an agency. We want them to want to come back to Neon Rose, not just because they love that creator they work with, but just because they just like working with Neon Rose, because they're like, whoever we work with is going to be great because it's just easy. It's streamlined. We're on top of it. So creators need to know that like that's just as important for them, because brands like they are aware. I'm in a lot of groups of management owners, of just people in influencer marketing, and I can promise you that brands and agencies are talking about the creators they loved working with and the ones who they felt like were difficult to work with. Like it is being talked about, and there's a lot of value in just being professional and being flexible and just going above and beyond. Like if you loved a partnership, like there's a lot of value in you posting that product another time. Doesn't mean you have to do another sponsored ad, but like you just might be like loving that bar that you worked with and you just have it like, you're on a flight and you just like have yourself eating it and they're like, wow, then people are like, the brand sees it, people are seeing it. Like there's a lot of value in just going above and beyond. And I can promise you like it's noticed for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I will say too, like you do have to be flexible. Like I know, again, brands are coming to you because you know how to market towards your audience, right? But there are times where you do have to be flexible, obviously remaining professional if this is the creative they provided, like still staying true to it, but also adding your own twist to it. But then if things are changing in the industry, you also have to evolve with it too, so that you can continue growing. You don't want to be at a standstill because that can ultimately make you tank. But if Reels are the new thing, let's start posting more Reels. If people are heading over to TikTok, let's figure out what I can do on TikTok. And evolving with the industry so that you don't get stuck in this one spot.
Now, speaking of that, what are your guys' thoughts on the new TikTok ban bill that just got passed? We're not too worried, but
as an agency owner, obviously, like it's not the things we love to see. I immediately, as you guys probably know, received an email from me. I immediately wanted to send out, a note to all of our talent being like, one, obviously we're aware, but also this is just what we're doing so that you also, because there are talent that are like, oh my gosh, especially people that really their income is mostly coming from TikTok or there's a split. For us, it's also a reason why we talk about diversifying because, you don't own those platforms. It's important that you aren't just on one platform. So that is something that people should be thinking about. But yes, we're still a year away from anything potentially happening. I don't anticipate there being, this going away. I really don't. I think it could be different. It might shift. Depends on maybe who ends up owning TikTok. But, for us as an agency, we already, before this happened, we already got ahead of it, making changes in our contracts, wanting to protect our talent. That's all we can continue to do is make sure that we're setting up our talent for success. Keep getting engaged, obviously always having conversations like, listen, we're not seeing any sort of change right now in brands asking for, less TikTok deliverables and partnerships lessening. So right now, as an agency, we don't see a change. There's no change in anything. If we had this conversation in 6 months, will that be different? Maybe. But as of now, I would say creators shouldn't be looking at this as being fearful. You should just be looking at it as business. Okay, what as a business owner, I'm pivoting all the time. So if I was a business owner and I only had a TikTok right now, I would make sure that I'm also on another platform. But I wouldn't be all of a sudden, I'm just not going to post on TikTok anymore. It's going away. You shouldn't be thinking like that. You should be business as usual, but forward thinking, what should I do to set my own self up for success?
Yeah, honestly, I have not really seen any lull in TikTok requests. They're still coming through as normal.
I'm gonna say, I feel like on our end too, we're getting a ton of gigs on TikTok still. Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
We're wow, we're getting a ton of TikTok right now. Yeah.
Picking on Instagram a little bit. Have you guys seen the whole new tiered system that they just released
For all the businesses.
for businesses up to like $350 a month for some people, like
for increased reach.
That's not gonna, I would say that is not going to be generally something a creator is going to be interested in. I think creators are going to stick with the $15 a month basic plan. I think that's going to be a lot more geared towards businesses. I know there's a lot of AI functions that are going to be coming out that are going to be great for businesses. So I would say as a creator, listen, it's so funny because the little blue check was like such a, like, just the holy grail. If you got verified, it was like the biggest, like, posting it on your story. It was like you were like became the president. And I think that like it was a really big deal. And now, like, obviously being able to purchase it, it's definitely taken that status symbol away. But I do feel that, like, someone with $3,000 now has a blue check. So it's no longer like you made it. But it's not an exclusive thing. But like, there's a lot of benefits to having it. Like we have a lot of strong relationships and close relationships at Meta. So, if we had a creator that needed to get in touch with something there, like we would have been able to, we help our creators do that. But there's a lot of value in you having that, like, support from there. It's protection. Obviously, there is a lot of impersonation and fraud and things happening. Like, just unfortunately, we're seeing a lot more of that. So if you're a creator and you aren't paying for that, like, it is probably something you should consider because there is a lot of value in having that support from Meta. But I would not be saying that you should go out and get the $350 right now. I think that like your $14.99 is probably well spent currently. Oh my gosh.
She likes to make a guest appearance sometimes.
She's like, we were talking about Meta. So yeah, I wouldn't say that like as a creator you should be thinking that like, oh, should I know, what should I be doing? Should I go up? And right now it's, especially when things are new, like let's just wait, let's see where that goes. But I would say that if you aren't verified, it probably is something that you should consider because there is value in that. I know a lot of people that were like, literally have said like being able to have that customer support and that contact is extremely valuable.
Yeah, the Meta support is like game changer.
Yeah. It's a good peace of mind.
Yeah.
Like that's why we got it, because we have had people, especially because we travel so much, even using VPNs, it's like the amount of times that we've gotten that like really scary notification that we've been logged out of our account while we're in like Mexico or Dominican or wherever we are. It's just like like kind of like
it's just a little insurance policy, and I think it's just something that we haven't had really obviously before, and so I think it's a great like benefit for creators that, and so I think it's like I would highly recommend it if you don't have it. But it is funny how it just really went from this like everyone was just doing everything they can. I can't tell you, it was one of my number one requests from New Talent was like, can you get me verified? That was like
that's so funny.
The thing was like, we need articles, we need press on you. It was like such a thing, and so. Now it's funny. We're like, you can get that to yourself for $15 a month.
I remember that though, because we totally tried doing that. Because like we got featured in like BBC, we got featured in Insider Business, on Insider, all these things. And I was like, oh, perfect. Like we can go get verified now. And then we'd always get rejected. I'm like, no, like we were.
And the funny part is like now when you look at what they were actually, the reason behind it was really more on the like impersonation protection. So they didn't, although they were having you submit all this press, like that's actually not what they were like hearing. But they were thinking like, oh no, like I'm a big deal, like I should get verified. They were looking to be like, is there a chance of like that fraud and that impersonation, which I don't think that's how creators were looking at it. So now like that is the main point of having that verification, is to have that protection. So I think that like it's just funny how it has shifted. But I would say we don't need to worry about the ranking yet, unless you're a business. Then I'd say you should probably look into what the different tiers are. I mean, you guys have a business, so that could be something for a creator that you guys might want to consider, but for your actual Lover's Passport, you're probably fine.
Yeah. I will say one thing I found interesting is ever since we have been Meta verified, anytime we try pitching in the DMs to get a contact or just like get an intro started, the response rate from when we were verified to unverified, and obviously there's some change in like follower counts as well, but like being able to be at the top of a brand's inbox versus lost somewhere in the middle, it's huge, at least in terms of that department too. So I feel like there's multiple benefits to getting it, even though, paying for customer support kind of sucks. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good business write-off. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal in terms of like, if you end up like, you do end up needing it for something like really terrible, like you're going to be like, it was worth, it's like you said, it's like you're paying insurance. You're always like, I'm paying this every month. Like, it's so annoying. It's such a big amount, but when you need it, you're like, I'm glad I have it. It's one of those insurance policy things that you just kind of have to it's you have to just do it.
All right, last question I have for you. We've talked a lot about like what's happening now and your past experience. What do you anticipate then in 5 years from now? Like we get asked this question all the time from a lot of our students. They're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, well, if you asked me that last year, it would have been completely different to this year. And then every year has been like
radical changes.
Yeah, radical changes. So from you guys seeing what the industry is now and where it was, where do you see it being in like 5 years? What should everyone be thinking about?
I definitely don't see it going anywhere.
No, it's not going anywhere. I get that a lot. Do you think it's going to be like, do you think it's still going to be around? I'm like, I think it's going to be around. Like, we're in like, what? This year is expected to be like a $20 billion. I think in like a few years, it's going to be like a $50 billion. Like, that's not an industry going anywhere. So people also, you said, like starting with you in your courses, like it's not too late. Like there's plenty of opportunities to go around, a lot of, obviously money in there. But, I think that especially creators who either have been in this for a while or are getting in it now, like, there's going to be, you're looking for like, what more can I do? Like, of course, like partnerships are great. We want to ensure they're aligned. We want to ensure that they're like, make sense of what you're doing and you love it. But like, obviously there's going to be an even bigger kind of movement toward like creating your own products, co-collaborations, whatever that might be. You're writing a book, what is next for your personal brand? And that's where that management piece comes in, because I would say like that, I don't know about in 5 years, that's now. So that's not like in 5 years, are we going to be doing that? Like we should be talking about that now. We have strategy calls constantly with our talent and like kind of like what is next. Cause like, listen, we're great at partnerships and we can do that for you guys. And we want to continue and we will continue to do that. But it's also like, we want to be able to help you do like even more. So it's like, what's next for the creators? So I think that's what people need to be thinking about, is kind of like, what is next for my personal brand? And we're going to see, as you see, we see a lot of co-branded partnerships now, a lot of people launching their own products, courses, whatever it might be. I would say that like something you can own, because it's like, you go back to the TikTok thing, like you can't have all your eggs in one basket or even two baskets of two platforms that you don't own. So, we talk about people having like their website, their blog. What is that physical thing that you can also own? I think that's going to be really important for creators in the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, because like we can't, guess what. There's going to be another platform that'll come out, probably a few, something might take off. Generally, they may not all. So there's always going to be new things going. We're going to have to keep like pivoting and moving with the times, but we can control kind of like our business. And so that's where I really encourage people of like, what can you do that you own, that you can control? And I think that's going to be just continue to grow over the next,
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my point of, being flexible and evolving with the times so that you're just not stuck.
Yeah.
In one spot.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a place where you're like, now what do I do? They just like ban TikTok and now I'm done. Like you don't want to be in that position. Yeah. Be forward thinking, management, and have those conversations. You don't have to be launching a product next month, but just be talking about it. If I were to launch a product, what would it be in? Let's just have those conversations and just
set
start
that
thinking.
Foundation first, so that when brands are ready to do something like this, your dream brand maybe, they already know you have a foundation of content and a community rooted in that specific brand that you constantly share about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, you guys. I think this has been super helpful, I'm sure, for a ton of other creators. And if you guys are listening, they do have an Instagram that they're always putting out new creator tips on. If you guys are a new creator, or if maybe your agency is terrible, because ours is awesome, then you can go shoot them a DM. But
you can to say that.
But anyway, thank you again for taking an hour. We know you guys are extremely busy, so I'm happy that we got to connect and find a time to all hop on.
This is great. We love working with you guys. We really appreciate you having us on. I mean, we can talk about this all day long. So I appreciate your guys' time and inviting us on and talking about some of our favorite things.
Yeah, this was so fun, guys. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah,
and
thank
Kaylee,
you guys.
We'll see you tomorrow in our meeting. All right. And thank you again for listening to this episode of Unfiltered Adventures. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review. And if you have a creator friend or someone else that is interested in what the new industry updates are, you can go ahead and share this with them. And with that, we'll see you on the next episode of Unfiltered Adventures.